Hello and welcome to part 11 of the Micky head tutorial set. This is David Ward. And when last I left you, we had gone through with the sculpt tool and sculpted in a lot of extra detail and wrinkles and things like that. And then baked out a normal map, as you can see here. Now, what we're going to do now is go ahead and smooth up some of these wrinkles, because you can see it's not real desirable, some of those sharper edges there on the wrinkles there. So we'll smooth some of those out and then get in with some subsurface scattering and get that all set up, and then probably jump in and work on the textures for the eyeballs themselves. Okay, so now there's a couple of ways you can do the smoothing of the normal maps. You can take this image into Photoshop and use the blur tool there, or you can just go ahead and do it here in Blender. So we'll just do that. Let's jump into texture painting. There we go, object mode, texture paint, and open up our toolbox here. Hit the T on the button. Let me go ahead and turn my screencast keys on. Hold on. Okay, it's been a couple days since I had that open, so I had to go through all the user preferences and everything. Anyways, okay, so that's turned on. Now, we want to just kind of use the brush tool and just come in here and kind of playfully select, carefully select the edges and or the areas that we want to smooth out. So this area is one, for example, right here is smile line. It's a little too much there. So we basically, it's the same as painting anything else, except we're not going to use the clone brush. We're going to use the soften brush, and that's basically just like Photoshop's blur tool. So we'll do that, and then we want to make sure that we're actually painting on the correct image. And the way we do that is go to your slots tab, and then we want to scale this out so we can see what we're doing. And the canvas image, that's the canvas over here, that's the one we're painting on. So we want to use Micky normals. So it doesn't change anything over here because we have our GLSL shading set up. Now if we were in a other view, like multi-texture, we would see what we're painting on. But we want to see the final shebang. So we'll go back to GLSL. And just to make sure, if you're a little unsure if that's the right one or not, you can go back to Tools, and instead of Soften, just use Texture Draw, and then grab some green or something and just put a little swipe across there. You can see, boom, it didn't paint anything on our visible texture here, but it did paint on the one that we want, which is what we want. So let's undo that, go back to the Soften tool, and then we're going to come in here, and if you can, I'm going to paint right here, so let's zoom in on that same area here on this map, and you can kind of see it as I go. Kind of blurs that out over there. So we'll just kind of come in here, real soft, set the strength down a bit, maybe 0.1, and we'll just come in here and just gently smooth up those harsh wrinkles. He's not that old yet. He doesn't have such harsh wrinkles just yet. So we'll come in here and selectively soften up some of the skin deformations there. On the nose and just different areas where we might have got a little carried away with some of these textures and wrinkles and things. Just come in here, across his forehead maybe. Just click, click, click. If you click and drag, you might do too much, so I just kind of selectively click in the areas that I'm wanting to soften up. So I want to leave some of the pores in there. So, okay, so that looks a little better, I think. Let's go ahead and save this image over here. Let's do the corners of the mouth. You can also blur it over here in this window, or you can come over here and do the same thing over here. Let's just go to the paint view and set our scale of our brush down. I'm going to come in here, maybe a little higher, and clean some of this area up. Actually, let's see. Didn't look like it's wanting to do anything, so maybe set the strength up a little higher. A little bit, real gradual. So we'll just click in there. Let's clean some of that harshness up there. You know, while we're in the texture painting mode, let's go ahead and get the inside of his mouth set up. Kind of almost forgot about that. Let's go back to the texture draw, and this time we're going to change that slot back to mixed. Actually, before we do that, we need to save this image. So we're going to save as image, and you can see I have normal map, Micky normal map JPEG, and I also have normal map 1. That's when I was playing with it in the meantime between part 10 and part 11 here. So I'm going to go ahead and just replace that one. Save as image. Okay, and good to go. Let's go ahead, like I said, and go ahead and choose the Micky texture map, and then we can actually paint the inside of his mouth a little bit easier. So we'll go back to Tools, And let's select the color of the edge of his lips. So let's come in here and grab this color swatch here and then the little eyedropper tool there. And click in here, just one of these mid to light colors. So we'll just click right, that's a little too dark. How about just clicking and dragging, maybe up here. Trying to find a good color. We'll go with that one. Kind of a burgundy almost. So all these little guys are his teeth, but this here is his gums, his tongue, and then just the rest of the inside of the mouth here. So let's make our brush all the way to 100%, make it a little bigger, and we'll just come in here, maybe even bigger, and just paint everything that's going to have that color there inside his mouth. If you want to get real detailed with it, you can go ahead and find a texture map or a reference image of his tongue. The rest of the inside of the mouth, I think, in my opinion, it can just be this set standard color, because you're really not going to see, unless you're inside his mouth, like you're from the perspective of a piece of gum or something that he's chewing on, or like the old Pee Wee Herman show where, the camera was back in his throat, you could see him put a toothbrush in his mouth and all that kind of thing. Unless you're actually going to be inside the mouth, you don't really need to put that much detail in there. You might put a few of the taste bud images there on the tongue. I guess we could go ahead and do that if you like. Let's go ahead and set our brush to kind of a pale pink, almost white color. Set the strength down. And we'll use this texture here that we were using on the sculpting tool. So we'll just click and drag that in here. And you can see it's a nice little taste bud looking type of thing. So there we go. So that'll work. So we'll go ahead and kill that texture there. And now go ahead and leave it on the white, maybe a tiny bit yellowish tint. He doesn't have that crest white smile that's in all the advertisements. So it'll be fairly close. He's not filthy. He just, he doesn't bleach his teeth. They're natural. So we'll just clean up all these little tooth areas here. Zoom out. Maybe I'm going to set the fall off of the brush a little shorter. So it's a harsher edge, but it doesn't matter. He's got plenty of room around each one of these, so we don't have to worry about overflow on accident. And again, you could do this in Photoshop if you like, but I like to do everything that I can in Blender itself. It's pretty self-contained, all-in-one software package. I love it. Okay, so that's all his teeth. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and save this image. Good to go. So now, if we were to jump into object mode here, if we wanted to go ahead and create a shape key just to see what the inside of his mouth looks like, we'll go ahead and hit the plus button there to create the basis. Go ahead and create one more, our first key. And let's just select, just for play's sake, just select this area here. And then, okay, we have connected proportional editing. Set our mouse cursor or 3D cursor about right there. Hit the period button so we're rotating around it. And let's just it doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't going to be an actual shape key. I just want to open his mouth so we can see inside of it and say aw, aw, say aw. Good to go. Okay. You can kind of see his tongue there. So let's go ahead and good to go. All right. So of course that's a little odd shaped because we didn't do it like we wanted to, but we'll go ahead and get rid of that just to see inside there. Okay, so we got his texturing all set on his head and inside his mouth and everything. Let's go ahead and set up some lighting in here. I'm going to go ahead and turn off those background images. They're a little distracting now that we don't need them. Okay, so set up some lighting. Since we're using the Blender internal, and we're going to be using particle hair, it works best, the particle hair works best with a spotlight and buffered shadows. You can use ray trace shadows, but it'll take a little longer, and you know me, I like to find the shortest route possible. Like Bill Gates hires the laziest people he can find because they always find the easiest way to do things. So that's, I don't know that I'm lazy. I can be lazy, but also like to find easy ways to do things. So we'll set our spotlights up here, kind of the 3-point lighting setup. We got our main light here on his 3/4 view there on the front. Let's go ahead and set that to, let's say 1.5, and make sure it's inverse linear, because inverse square, I'm not sure what that option is for. I don't ever use it, so I don't know. I also always use inverse linear. It seems to be a bit brighter and a little better. So go ahead and change that light to a spotlight. I'm going to go and Alt-R to clear out its rotation, and then give it some new rotation like so. I'll go to our front view, and this will be a fill light. Let's go and name these. This one here is the main light. Where's my name? There we go. Okay, so we'll say lamp underscore key. So it's the key light. Then this one will be lamp, and we'll say underscore fill. So it's filling in the shadows on this area, so it doesn't need to be as bright. 0.5 is good. Go ahead and set up a backlight to get a nice separation of his shoulders and background. Coming down from the top. Okay, and we'll call this one lamp underscore back. So we got our 3-point light set up. We got our key light, our fill light, and our backlight. So now if we come in here, and let's get our camera set up a little bit better, so we're actually looking at him rather than, looking nicely at him rather than way up in the sky. Get our 3D view set up about where we want, so probably about right there. Then you can hit Control-Alt-0 on your numpad, Control-Alt-0, and it will reset the camera to that position. Now it's not going to have the same focus, field of view, and things like that, so we'll just have to grab that and hold down my middle mouse button and drag it back, and that'll zoom out a bit. And then go ahead and click and kind of rearrange it just a bit. Okay, so now the general setting for the default camera is 35 millimeters. So that's a little bit fisheye. It's not it's not as natural as a human eye. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up to, usually I find that 50 works pretty well. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit again. So we'll get that set up, and maybe just a tiny bit more. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this real quick. Save, and we'll do a quick render. Okay, so it's looking decent. We could change some of the shadow settings there. You can see some jagged shadows. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And also let's set the background to be quite a bit darker, and then have a little bit of a gradient to it. So turn on paper sky and blend sky, and then the zenith color, we'll go ahead and run that all the way down. So you can see a nice black fading into a dark gray. So it'll be a nice, decent, background that looks a little more interesting than just a solid color. And then also, I'm going to change this fill light. Let's go ahead and knock it down a little bit. 0.5. I'm going to go 0.25, just so I get a little bit harsher shadow here from the fill light, or from the key light. And then also the backlight, go ahead and put it about 0.25. And also, I believe we probably, okay, we don't. I was going to say we probably have ambient occlusion turned on, which we can go ahead and turn that on, but let's knock that way down as well, 0.1 even so. So now, before we render again, let's go ahead and change our shadow settings a little bit. Here on the key light, go ahead and change that. Buffer shadows, good. Soft is good. Bias, that's a little too high. If we want a little bit, harsher edged, not as soft edge shadows, and also needs to be lower for when we put particle hair in. So I'm going to change that to 0.1 rather than 1. So we'll say 0.1. And then also the sample buffers to give us a little bit better shadows if we set that to 4. Now, depending on your processor and video card and RAM, that might become an issue for you. And also we need to change this to buffer shadow. But you don't need to go all the way up to 9. It's kind of unnecessary. You won't see a big difference. But the bias is the most important part, especially for the hair. So go ahead and change these all to buffer shadows, 0.1 in there, and then 4 there. Okay, so let's take a look at our previous render. We hit F11 to bring that up. And tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to escape out there. Let's go to our render settings. You know me. I don't like to have the render in the image editor because it takes one of my windows. I don't want it to do that. So I'm going to say new window. So whenever I render, it's going to pop up a brand new window and not mess with anything I have set up here. Go ahead and save that. Okay. So I hit F11. We can see the one we rendered before. Kind of get an idea. It looks okay. Let's hit F12 now. We'll render it again with a little bit better shadows and better background. So that looks quite a bit better. Now, to get this a little more lifelike, let's go ahead and escape out. Let's add that subsurface scattering. Now, if you're not familiar with subsurface scattering, which I'm sure most of you probably are, but if you're not, Subsurface scattering, it's what makes things look not necessarily lifelike, but it's what makes, like a candle, makes it look waxy. It's when the light enters the surface, goes down to the subsurface right below the top layer, the top surface, and scatters. The light scatters. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a glow. So you get a sheen off of the very top layer, and then once the light goes slightly through it, it kind of breaks up. And that's what gives it the waxy look, where it can be shiny wax on top, but also kind of have a glowy look around it. And that works for skin as well. So let's go ahead and collapse some of these guys so we can see what we're doing here. I like to use the monkey head as a bit of an example there. So we'll go ahead and check the checkbox here for subsurface scattering. Now we're in the material settings for our head there. Go ahead and expand that out. And there's a few presets that you can use. I usually select Skin 2 for a Caucasian character. If you're using an African American or darker skinned, you can use Skin 1. That just basically changes this color here. But I'm going to use Skin 2, and we'll go with that. If you render out right away, you can see it's going to look very waxy. So it renders a pass there, and then it renders in. It kind of fades all of the visible surface together, and it scatters a bit too much under the skin, so it looks very waxy. So what we do to fix that is set the scale. Right now it's 0.1. Let's go to 0.01, and then let's set the scattering weight a little bit. I like the back texture, or the back setting, to be 2.0, and that gives a nice glow through his ears. Like if we didn't have the front light and we only had the back light, you'd see that glow, the red glow through the ears because they're thin skin. So we'll go ahead and say F12 again. You can see already setting that the scale down to 0.1 really helped out a lot. Now he still looks a bit waxy, so I'm going to go ahead and knock that down even further. Let's say 0.005, cut that in half, and then if we add our texture to it a little bit, what that does is it kind of blurs the texture, so it kind of blends in with the scattering a little bit better. So I'm gonna, if we do that all the way to 1, we won't see a lot of that detail that we painted in. So if we do that real quick, so it kind of blurs all the main features together, and almost looks like, I like to think of it, it looks like a pancake. It's like that smooth tone, you know, of when you cook a pancake, the surface, the tan color. So, or like, you know, pizza dough before it's cooked or something like that. So that's a little too much. I'm going to set that down. Let's go way low, 0.15, and then we'll do another quick render there. Okay, and I think that'll work for our subsurface scattering. Now, one final thing to do. I was going to go ahead and jump on the eyeballs, but we're having so much fun with this. Let's keep going. We'll do the eyeballs in part 12. But let's go ahead and create a specular map for our guy here. So let's go ahead and close that out. I'm going to go ahead and save what we have here. Okay, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, select everything, and let's create a new image. And 1024 will be fine this time because we're not really putting a lot of details, just basically color separations. So I'm going to say Micky underscore specular. Okay, and the color, we'll go ahead and set that as a black background, and that'll be fine. Go ahead and say OK. And then we'll tab back out, and we'll come over here to our texture slot here from our material tab. Create one more texture there, say new, and this one's going to be, I guess we'll go ahead and name it Micky Specular. And specular obviously is the sheen, the amount of shininess something is. Go ahead and name this one while we're at it, Micky Normals. Okay, Micky Specular. Now, set the image to be this one we just made, Micky Specular. Go ahead and choose that. There we go. And right now, it turned everything black because we haven't set it to be the proper influence yet. So let's collapse all these guys. And actually, before we do that, image mapping, there we go. UV, it's already set, so let's make sure it's going to UV map. There we go. We don't want it to affect the color. We want it to affect the specular setting. So we'll go ahead and click these three guys here. As you can see, he turned very dull, our settings here on the under the specular tab here no longer apply because they're being controlled by this black image now. So what we need to do is paint onto that black image wherever we want it to be shiny or dull. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse that properties panel there, and let's just go to our front view and go back to texture paint, and the slots, make sure we're painting onto Micky specular. There we go. And go back to tools, and this is going to be good, texture draw, and we're wanting to paint white on top of that black, and so everything that's going to be white is going to be shiny. So if we zoom in here, and again, if we open up the properties panel, if we were in the multi-texture, we'd be painting directly on the black, but I like to see it in action, so we'll just put that back to GLSL. Now, like I said, anytime we paint, that's going to be a shiny section. So let's set our strength way down, because we don't want to be if we just do a swipe there, boom, that's a shiny spot right across his head. It's kind of hard to tell here, but if we were to render, we'd see a dull, shiny spot. So I want to do this a little more gradually. So I'm going to set my strength down to, let's say, 0.3, 1/3 basically. So let's increase our canvas size here. And if you look in the mirror, you see your forehead's a little shinier than the rest, like say your eyebrow area. So we'll just paint there. You can kind of see it in effect over here. And then down the nose will be a little shinier there. Okay. Then the lips, they can be shiny if they're moist, or they obviously if they're not moist, they probably won't be shiny. The cheek area there. Cheek area over here. Then maybe the eyelids just a little bit. Okay. Then maybe this area of the eyebrow. Just a little bit across the rest of his face. And then let's go to our side view, and let's, instead of material, let's go to material. Trying to get those shadows out, but I guess we'll just play with it as is. Okay, so I want to do both ears at the same time, so I'm going to just go to our options and turn off these guys. And we'll just do a swipe across here, and the ears will be a little glossier than the rest of us. Maybe not quite that glossy. So if you get it too glossy, you just got to go back to your tools. Instead of painting with the white, just make it maybe a little more gray. Or if you want it totally dull again, just paint it black again. So let's go ahead and paint that. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so now we have a nice specular map for his face. And this would be handy too if you're doing like a scene. You can create a second specular map if you're doing a scene where like somebody's been crying. You can put some little tear streaks down their face or something like that. So let's go ahead and save this as save as image, and just go ahead and select one of these guys. So I can just change this name here, and we'll say specular. And I want to go ahead and set that as a JPEG, quality 100, save. Okay, so now we just go back to object mode, and there's our weird looking specular map. So it's already set up in our materials. So all we got to do now is take a look through our camera, and everything's good. Just hit F12, and we can get a nice render there. And it's a bit too much, like it's really shiny there on the nose. Actually, we forgot to do the throat and everything too, so let's do that real quick. Texture paint, everything should still be set up. Of course, we'll have to change the color back to the white, maybe a soft gray. Let's come in here and just paint on his throat, neck area. Okay, so let's see on the map how that updated that. Good to go. And also, I guess what we can do while we're in here, let's go ahead and maximize this window, Control up while we're hovered over it. And then we can hit the T and the N. And let's paint the inside of the mouth, because that's going to be shiny. So we'll set our brush up, maybe set the strength way up to 1, maybe the radius down, and let's just paint everything that's going to be inside the mouth. We'll just paint that solid white. So that's going to be shiny, shiny, shiny. As shiny as it can be. Oops. Well, I said oops. No need to worry. That's the scalp, and we won't be able to see it, so it's no big deal if you accidentally paint over it. So go ahead and save this image. There we go. Control down. Now we'll minimize that window. And you can't see it right now, but his teeth are now shiny. If his mouth was open, he would have those shiny teeth. So let's clean up that nose area a little bit. Let's get the soften tool. Maybe make it quite a bit smaller. Quite a bit smaller. And let's come in here, clean up some of this weird edge here. You can also use the smear tool and just click and drag. Maybe set the strength up. It kind of works the same as the smudge tool in Photoshop, if you're familiar with that. Kind of a blur, but also kind of grabs the surrounding pixels and smooths them down. Okay, so I think that'll work. Go ahead and save one more time. There we go. And you can change some of the influence of some of this stuff. Let's go back to object mode, and let's make this window a little smaller there now. Expand this one out. Grab our guy. He's already grabbed still. Let's grab the materials. And if you go to Specular, this was the original settings, of course. Our new Specular Map is now set to influence all of those. You can change, like, say I don't want it to be that hard, the specular, that harshness. So I'm going to scroll that down a little bit, and you can see it can go into the negative zone, so be careful. But if we scroll that down, you can see it gradually getting a little softer there, like on his nose, especially -1, a little bit too much. So 1 is a nice hard glow, like maybe he's, you know, just came out of the water, came out of the swimming, and his skin's all wet. That'll work, but we don't want it quite that glossy. So I'm going to set that down to about 0.25. And we'll take a look at our render again. Go ahead and render. And that's still a little bit glossy, but we can play with that. Maybe make it 0.1. And the intensity, we'll mess with that too, maybe 0.5. And take one more look here. There we go. That looks quite a bit better. Okay, so that's going to be it for part 11. Sorry, this one ran a lot longer than I expected, but I think we got some good stuff covered. So we got our head pretty well done. We're just going to work on the eyeballs themselves next, and then after we get those all set up, we'll jump in and actually start working on some of that particle here. So that's going to be it for part 11. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in part 12.